Welcome to the Americus podcast. My name is John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Chelsea Collins. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we have a form on our podcast as people are kind of filling it out, and we kind of had you scheduled, and one of the questions on the podcast form is, would you like to share a personal story? And so you marked that. So I got excited, and we kind of set up a time for a call, and we spoke for about 20, 30 minutes, and you shared a story about what happened with your pregnancy of your daughter and the impact that has made on you and your family and the city even, and how that has made a huge move in sharing that story with others. And so I thought, wow, I really enjoyed the story. I want to hear more of the story. And so you said you would love to share that story with us. So thank you so much for doing that for today. So as we get into that, I would love to hear a little bit about just Chelsea Collins growing up. Again, I've only been here for 5 months. I love the city. So tell me a little bit about what it's like to grow up in Americus, Georgia.
So growing up, I'm one of 4 girls. I have 3 sisters. My parents were, my father was a mailman. My mother was a school teacher. We all 4 went to Southland Academy. That was our high school. And we grew up on a dirt road off of Highway 19 when it was a 2-lane still. Okay. And we loved just doing country things, playing in the dirt and riding our go-kart, all around. We lived right in front of a cow pasture, so there were certain times where that was a little smelly. We would be late for school sometimes. We had to move a cow out of the road. We were not farmers. We just lived near a farm.
That's right.
But I had a wonderful childhood, very adventurous. When I was in middle school and high school, I really enjoyed athletics. I got involved I played soccer. I was a cheerleader. I ran cross country. I was on the track team. That all kind of worked out, seasonal, where I was able to do all those things. But yeah.
Yeah, so being one of 4, were the other children also kind of in the sports? Like, that must have been a lot of dynamics going on with just trying to get to the show.
Absolutely. My mom was always running around trying to get us to and from, and there may have been a couple times where she forgot us too. But I can understand now as a parent of 3 how that can happen. But there was a lot of bouncing around. My sisters, they also did sports, maybe not quite as many, and then just other extracurricular things. But somehow she made it work.
That's awesome. So, so you're young, you're growing up. Kind of what's your personality like? Are you a person that's super relational? Are you kind of reserved? What were your dynamics?
No, I'm very outgoing. I love small talk. I love personal talk. I love to get to know people. And I really think that, and I mean, I had a lot of friends. I love to make sure everyone felt involved and included. I never wanted anyone to feel that they were, an outsider. And I think that my maybe teachers started to notice that. I had I think I was in 9th or 10th grade. I had a teacher pull me aside outside of class. I thought I was in trouble for something. Oh, and don't get me wrong, I did like a little mischief. But he pulled me aside and he said, "Have you thought about college yet?" And I mean, at this age, absolutely not. Yeah. And I was like, no, sir. And he said, "I really think you should go into public relations." And I had no idea what that was really. And I don't even know that I gave it a second thought until I went off to college, and it was time to choose a major. So I remembered that thing that professor taught me. But that all really kind of boils into, honestly, what I do now. But public relations it was who I am, I guess. I enjoy talking to people. I love meeting new people. I don't meet strangers.
Well, that's good. And I think that's almost like a lost art. And I think it's obviously, it is new. I mean, we're in a very, different kind of polarized world, and so it's really great to have people that are fully engaged, that love, being vulnerable and sacrificing and being intentional with relationships. Is that, did you notice anyone in your life, maybe parents or other people, that also kind of spurred that in you to have new relationships, seek new relationships, or was that just Chelsea, that's just who I was? It's
probably just Chelsea, but I will say that I get a lot of that probably from my mom. She's also very outgoing, and as a kid, she's the one you're waiting on in the car after church. Stop talking, Mom. Yeah. But I do that now too. So my husband will take and load them all up in the car, and he's still waiting on me. But probably get some of that from her. My grandmother, I think, was the same way. Loved meeting new people and just having relationships and close relationships.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm the second born.
Okay.
And so I think our birth order kind of followed suit. But yeah, I guess I was the more mischievous of the four.
Okay. Well, that's good. So, all right, so you're growing up, you have this great personality, you're engaging in all these activities. Where was your headspace at? What did you want to be? Where were you going in life? Did you know?
No, honestly, I had no idea. Okay. I always thought, if anyone asked me, I'd say a teacher, because that was what my mom was. But I really, really had no idea. But I think it was because I didn't have those opportunities to see really what was out there besides your general doctor, teacher, these certain categories. But I didn't know, and I think in high school I was still trying to find myself and find what I love. I like when people like me. I like to be liked, and that probably led to some of my later life decisions that began in high school, but certainly followed me to college and after.
Okay, all right. So we're in high school, finishing up. You're about to graduate. Where do you want to go to college? Where are you at?
Okay, so we have a wonderful university right here in our town, but I wanted to leave home. Not because I, disliked Americus. I just wanted to get away. And my oldest sister was already at Valdosta State. So we had gone and visited her there. So I already was familiar with the campus. And so it was kind of a no-brainer when it came time to choose. I didn't even tour other schools. That's where I wanted to go because my big sister was there. Yeah. And maybe some of that was that, being familiar with my surroundings and having my mentor there, my older sister, and so that was where I chose to go to school. And she lived in a house near campus, so I did not have to live in the residence halls or the dorms. And I do kind of regret that decision now that I work at a university. I see the experience that they get there. So if I could go back, I probably would have done 1 year there just to get that full experience. But I loved living with my sister. She helped me out so much with college. She really was a mentor for me when I got there. I had no idea about financial aid. I did not know where anything was, what forms do I need to do. But she showed me. She didn't just do it for me. She showed me. And so when we, because she was a senior when I was a freshman. So when she had graduated and she moved into a home with her fiance and then they got married. So I was by myself. Then I knew, and I knew what to do. So I really appreciated her during those years.
Yeah, I think everybody needs at least somebody that's been through the process and says, hey, how many forms are there and what do I need to do and how do I fill them out and where do I send them? So, no, that's good. So you're in Valdosta then. Okay. All right. So now we're kind of getting around that what do you do after Valdosta? How do we get to the story that you share with me on the phone about kind of your daughter?
Okay. So while I was in school, I traveled home a good bit to hang out with my friends here who went to school here at GSW, and to see my family, obviously, and to do laundry. And during one of those weekends, I came home. I went to a mutual friend's graduation party. So it was in May, and I met this really cute fella at this graduation party, and we hit it right off. He was a little bit younger than me, but it did not matter. And so we exchanged phone numbers, and I think we just really enjoyed each other's company. And so that's kind of where me and my husband's story starts.
Okay. All right. And your husband's name is?
Logan.
Okay. So Logan. So you meet Logan and you guys are connecting. Are you going back and forth from Valdosta? How do you end up kind of just kind of spending more and more time in Americus and just seeing him?
Yeah, so I did drive home a lot. As much time we started to spend, together, we grew more fond of each other, I guess you could say. And so I came home probably 98% of the time. He probably traveled there a couple, but that was because he had a job and he had to work on the weekends, and I didn't. So I traveled home, and I didn't always have Friday classes, so it just made sense. So we dated for probably 2 years, and we said, I love you after 6 months, and we just got really serious. And
so what was the plan? Were you guys planning to?
No, never, because he was still, young in college. There was never talks of marriage, not yet anyway. We just had a really good time together. We enjoyed some of the same things. We had mutual friends who also were couples. So some of my best friends were his friends too. So we had couples and we'd hang out together, and we also went back riding dirt roads. And there was one summer where we just were all kind of inseparable. We called it the summer of love.
Yeah.
Some of those other couples are no longer together, but we just had a really good time together. But then, I don't know, you want me to start getting into it?
Let's do it. Yeah.
But then things kind of started to change when my husband had a traumatic family, I think, incident when he was a freshman in college. So he gets off to college when he's a freshman. Again, remember, he's 2 years younger than me. So he gets to college, and he's already starting to do the party scene. And I was getting to a point where I was graduating, I was getting older, and maybe I do want to start thinking about marriage, and he is nowhere near that. So I was a little more mature, I guess, at that stage in my life, and I was maybe getting ready to move on. So I had started to consider in the back of my head, maybe we just need to part ways.
Yeah.
So not long after I start having those thoughts, I start having some feelings, some pregnancy feelings. And I guess those went on for a couple weeks, and I just kind of batted back and forth, could this be true? I don't know. I didn't really want to take a test yet, but then I think they became so clearly obvious to me that you really probably are.
Yeah.
And this is only the second time I've shared this, but I feel like each time I share my story, I get a little more vulnerable, because it is real life, and if anyone is ever finding themselves in this situation, they're probably having some of these thoughts too.
Yeah.
So I had graduated college already. I graduated in December of 2009. So I had moved back home right after graduation, still hanging out with him a lot, but already starting to get having those thoughts. And I got my first job not long after that. So I had, just landed my first job, and then I start having these symptoms, and I'm like, oh gosh. So we went to, before I had taken a test, we went to his formal. He was in a fraternity. We went to his formal, and at that point, I was pretty convinced I was definitely pregnant, and I did not want to be. I did not think it definitely was not a good time in either of our lives to be pregnant. And so I was a very naive 21-year-old who thought that maybe if I just drink a lot tonight, that might get rid of the problem. And that was a very naive, stupid thing to think, but it didn't work. And I'm glad that it didn't. I'm so glad it didn't. So I did, not long after that, take a pregnancy test and confirmed it. And I just was so surprised, lost, shocked. What the heck am I going to do? I mean, all the thoughts are running through. None of them were positive at that time, though. So I called on my big sister, my mentor. She was living about an hour away, and I don't remember if I told her over the phone or if I just told her to come immediately. I don't remember, but she drove immediately there, dropped her family and came. And I told her, and she was just, I guess, supportive and just was there. She just listened. She just loved on me. And so I remember her saying, well, before you make any decisions, you have to tell Logan. And I was like, I know. So I don't know how long after that, but I went over to his house and I was waiting on him to get home. He was doing a work event, and I was sitting. Somehow, I guess I had a key. I don't know. Somehow I get into his house. I probably did. And I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm so nervous and just thinking, is he going to leave me? Is he going to break up with me? I had no idea what to expect. But I remember it being so quiet in there. I could hear my heart thumping. I heard this little clock ticking, and it was just so nerve-wracking. But he had just gotten this sweet little boxer puppy who ended up living with us his entire life. He passed 2 years ago. But Hank. So the boxer climbed up on the couch, and we'd never allowed him on the couch. But in that moment, I did not care. It didn't matter. But he climbed up on that couch, and he just he laid his sweet little head on my tummy, and he just sighed. And in that moment, I just thought, okay, this is going to be okay. You can do this. You can tell Logan. It's going to be all right.
So those were some of your thoughts. What were your emotions? I would assume a lot of loneliness, a lot of anxiety. What?
All of it. All of the emotions. A lot of selfish thoughts, though. Here are some of the silly thoughts that I had. One was one of my best friends was having her bachelorette party coming up in a few months. It was the first bachelorette party I was going to get to go on as a young adult. We were going to the beach. It was going to be so much fun. We were going to have a great time. So one of my thoughts was, I can't be pregnant. I can't drink. I'm not going to be able to drink on that bachelorette trip. So that was one of my very selfish thoughts. A lot of it was disappointment for our families, parents and grandparents. Our grandfathers were pastors in their communities. So there was a lot of shame going to be tied to that. There was, like I said, all the emotions I was running through, but just a lot of selfish thoughts. None of them were joyous thoughts in that moment.
Yeah. So you get there, Logan comes into the house. What was that conversation like?
He was very silent when I told him for a bit. And then he just said, well, what do you want to do? And I didn't know. And he said, well, I'll support whatever you want to do. And so it kind of was like he put it all on me to make the decision. And so I didn't know what decision he wanted me to make. If I made one decision, was he going to leave me and hate that I made that decision, or vice versa? So that's all I remember really from that conversation was just a lot of confusion and how would we even make this work? He was paying for his own college. He's working, I think almost a full-time job while going to school full-time, and maintaining his social life. But, and then, so there was no clear-cut answer yet. So I think we just sat on it and processed it for a few more days, maybe another week or so. It's very fuzzy going back that far, but we discussed a couple different options.
Yeah. Or
the two that we thought we only had. But I went, so I think I'm all for educating myself before I make a decision. So when I got to work, this was before smartphones, so I couldn't just readily look this information up on my phone. I get to my job and I look on the computer and I start looking up the nearest abortion facilities and how much does it cost? Could I even afford something like this? Where is it? What does the process look like? I just had never educated myself on any of that. And I still couldn't. I could not educate myself because while looking at that screen, I think I was so overcome with guilt for even looking that up that my eyes filled with tears like they're doing right now. And I couldn't even read the screen. I think I got as far as the nearest one was Columbus. I think that's as far as I got. And I could not read the rest of it. And so I think I just kind of sat there and processed that for a little bit. And then I realized that if I could not read about that stuff, then I certainly could not go through with it. So I guess it was probably in that moment that I made the decision that I'm not going to be able to do this. So it looks like I'm going to have a baby.
Yeah. Wow.
And I really don't remember, after that going home and telling Logan that this is what we're going to do. But he was like, okay, we're going to do this then. He is a great guy, and he was a great guy then too. Still, his heart was good.
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay. So he quit school for a brief period so he could work full-time and even get some overtime because he knew that to support a family, he was going to need to, make some more money. And so at least I had my job too. And we just made ends meet. I think he was out of school for about a year before he went back.
So what was obviously there's just waves of emotions that are coming, right? You get to a place where you make the decision, all right, I'm not going to go through with this. What were some of the emotions after that? Did you feel, again, I know there's ups and downs, but did there feel some sense of relief or release or, this is a good thing that I'm going to try to pursue, and then, go and tell Logan, and then sharing with him? What were the emotions like during that time?
I think maybe hearing his support, like he said, he would support me either way. Maybe I didn't know his true heart at that time, but I think, one, that was the first step, having his support. Okay, so one little less thing to worry about. Then it was time to tell the families. We were still, both of us, more scared to tell our grandparents. And so we told our families. We sat down with each set and told them, and starting with mine because my family was here. And they were surprised, but they were, I don't know, I wouldn't say that they were excited, but they were also supportive. And
what did that do? That just continual people coming alongside of you?
One small release, okay. That was another hump, we had to get over, and to see that. And then there was a couple talks, already with them starting about, were we all going to get married? And we had decided we didn't want to get married just because we had to. We wanted to make sure that it was right, and that we did love each other, but we just didn't want it to be because we were pregnant, So those were our initial thoughts. And so when my parents asked us that was what we told them, and they were, okay. And then I don't remember who we told next, probably my grandparents, who were also living here. That was a little more tough, a little more challenging, because they definitely pushed the marriage a little bit harder with their traditional views. And I can understand, but we still were not ready to jump into that yet. And so it took some time for them, but they eventually came around. And then we drove to Jackson, Georgia, which is where my husband is from. And so we sat down and told his parents, and they probably were excited. I think his stepmom was probably yay, okay, we're going to have a grandbaby. Yeah. So, I mean, I think they were surprised too. And how are y'all going to make this work? Y'all are so young. But they were very supportive. They even arranged a baby shower with their local church, who just showered me with gifts, who had never even met me before. So many baby showers. I mean, I don't think we had to buy diapers for a year. But just amazing people coming together to support us who didn't even know us. And then telling his grandparents as well, who probably felt the same as, my grandparents, but they bit their tongue a little more. So those were huge sighs of relief telling our families. So I think after that, and then telling my friends, but asking them please not to share this, widely yet. I think after that, then there started to become thoughts of excitement and joy. And then when you start feeling, that child growing inside of you, I love being pregnant. Starting to have those feelings, I just got more and more and more excited. I will say there were times like going out in the community though, that I felt maybe who am I going to run into? What are their thoughts going to be of me? Because remember, I told you I'm a people person. I like everyone to like me, and I don't like people to think negatively of me. And so those were a lot of those thoughts. Were other people, what are they going to think of me? And so it took a lot of time to come around that. There's not very many pregnancy pictures of me. Probably again because I didn't have a smartphone. But two, it wasn't a proud time, I guess. But there were a few in my 8 and 9 months, because then it was like, I am so excited. I mean, it really, to go from that 9-month period of, I absolutely do not want to be pregnant, this is the worst thing to happen to me, to the day she was born, to being the best day of my life. And I mean, she has changed our lives so much since then. I can't even begin to tell you.
Yeah. So what was it like day of, baby's here, baby shows up. What is that dynamic like for you and for Logan?
Well, so let's go back to when I started having contractions. I was at the local Taste of Sumter here.
Nice. Okay.
And I did not know that they were contractions, but I remember talking to, I think, an OB or somebody, and she was like, I'm pretty sure those are contractions. You need to go home and prop up your feet and start timing them. I was like, okay. So I let Logan stay and keep having fun. He was with a friend of ours, and so I let him stay, and I said, I'll text you if anything. And so I think there was a band, and there was, going to be a party after Taste of Sumter, so he didn't want to miss that. So I go home, and I start timing. I try and go to sleep, because if that is the case, then let me get a nap in. And I did. I woke up 1 or 2, maybe the middle of the night. Logan is still not home, and I text him or call him, tell him to get home immediately. It's time to go to the hospital. Or we need to do a walk around the neighborhood, and then we're going to the hospital. Yeah. And so he did. Now, to my knowledge at that time, he had just been drinking. But he got home, this is 2 or 3 in the morning. He has not slept. We do a lap around the neighborhood. I get to the time where my contractions are, close enough, it's time to go to the hospital. And so he has not slept all night. He's been binging, partying hard. We get to the hospital, and the labor is just absolutely, I've never experienced it before, so I had no idea. And it was so tough. I could not wait to get that epidural. And then when I finally did, I didn't feel a thing, but she was born that afternoon, and Logan still has not slept. But he will tell you that it is the best day of his life, but he also will tell you it's one of the more shameful days of his life, because he said he was still high when she was born. He remembers, but it is the most incredible feeling. Something you have carried and grown for 9 months and struggled so much emotionally and fought for for her to finally be here was,
That's huge.
it was, I mean, truly the best day of my life. I remember leaving the hospital and getting wheeled out the next day, 2 days later. This is when Americus had the temporary hospital. They were like mobile units here in town, kind of where the Chick-fil-A is being built right now.
Okay.
It's Phoebe Sumter Medical Center. That new hospital didn't exist yet.
And that was right after like the tornadoes or okay, or the hurricane. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we called it, I guess, the temporary hospital. But I remember being wheeled out the next day and holding her, finally feeling, some relief on my body, but just holding my child. And it was like the shift from summer to fall had happened while I was inside. And I love fall weather. Yeah. So when we walked out, it felt so good. Mm-hmm. And I just was hit with this wave of euphoria that I have only ever experienced on the days that my children were born. Logan has other euphoria experiences, but so, I mean, and I'm sure the next few days and weeks were just a whirlwind of, being a new mom and figuring it all out. But I loved it. I loved motherhood. Mm-hmm. I was just obsessed with my child, and wanted to show her off to everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, share a little bit. I mean, how has her birth shaped your life? I mean, now you've made the decision. She's physically here. So now you and Logan are having to make changes in your life, to adjust and all those, like how has she changed your life and even your relationship and just the future of even what you do now? Like, it seems to me that obviously this is the impact. What she has done in your lives has shaped you. So
yeah. So after she was born, I mean, I guess a few months had gone by, and we had the discussion to raise her in a church. And so we started, I guess you could say, shopping around for churches. I grew up Methodist. My husband grew up Baptist. So we wanted to find a church that we enjoyed together. And we found that. We found home at Central Baptist Church here in Americus. They were all very welcoming, and I didn't feel those shameful, glaring eyes, that, y'all had I forgot something really important. Back up. I'm 7 months pregnant. Logan and I did end up getting married.
Okay.
He was waiting on me when I got home from work one day, and we just had this long discussion. And I mean, it was nothing truly romantic, but to me, it is our story, and I love it. Mm-hmm. I love it. And so we had a whole community of folks just pull together for us. We didn't pay a dime for our wedding.
That's cool.
His work people, our families, just either donated things or bought things for us. And I mean, we had a true wedding ceremony. It was just family. It was very small and intimate. We got married at the Lee Council House. Okay. I was 7 months pregnant. 7, in August. So we did end up getting married. And so now then, fast forward, yes, we had Kinsley, found a home at Central Baptist Church, and probably a year after that, we decided to join the church and to rededicate ourselves to the Lord. Because, I mean, growing up, we considered ourselves Christians, but maybe for me, there was never really a personal relationship, ever. Mm-hmm. So ever since then has completely changed and shifted our life because of that ultimate decision there, which I will attribute to probably Kinsley, because who knows where our paths would have turned. Logan and I speculate oftentimes what would have happened if we hadn't. We would not be together. He said he would probably be dead in the ditch somewhere. And we don't know where I went. We're thinking I was very overweight, though. But we talk about that sometimes. Kinsley, like I said, we were at Central, and probably a couple years later, I'm sitting in Sunday school. We have another guy come in, and he's sharing about all the different campus ministries that we can get involved in. This is our first small group that we had been involved in, so I'm kind of looking to get, I love to be involved. I love to get plugged in. I'm a yes person. I have had to turn myself down, to a no person sometimes, but now with 3 kids. But when he shared that there was a local pregnancy resource center, the way that he just talked about it really resonated with me, and I thought this is a perfect place for me to go and maybe volunteer and share my story with other young women or whoever who may find themselves in that same situation. And so I went and got plugged in, and immediately went through the training and became a volunteer. And I did that for a few years until with each when I had my second son, or my second child, my first son, Keller, I decided to step away just so I could be with him. And when it got about time for me ready to go back and volunteer, and I thought I could do it again, I found out I was pregnant again. So my third child, my second son, Lincoln, he came along, and so now I support them in any way I can. They're called the Hands of Hope Pregnancy Resource Center. And they're just an amazing place and a resource for women and men who are facing an unintended pregnancy or a crisis pregnancy, and even those who are post-abortive. And they have trainings and just sessions that they'll walk you through to prepare you to be a parent and motherhood. But first, they'll educate you on what your options are. And that was what I did not have. That was what I lacked. And I didn't know about the center. I wished I had. I would have made my decision probably a lot sooner. But that's okay. But they will educate the women or the families on the decisions, their options. And then if you choose to parent, then they'll walk you through and help you and give you guidance on how to be a parent and how to, what you're facing during your pregnancy. And they'll provide you with other resources that you may need. And they have sessions for men as well. I don't think they did when I was there, but that was something that I think came about later. So I always tell them that I'm there and I'm willing to share my story for anything. I did recently at a big banquet that they had, and they'll reach out to me every now and then for just some questions. But so, I mean, really Kinsley has changed that was my story. That's my life. With how Kinsley shaped me. But going back to Logan, Kinsley was probably a few months old when I found out about his addiction to pain pills. I was angry, I was shocked, I felt betrayed, like naive. How did you not know these things? But addicts become really good at lying to others. And it just became a normal part that I guess that never even noticed. But so I think we talked about it, and I don't think we talked about it. I think I texted him. I go to work the next day just processing what I had just found out, because I saw it on his phone. I think I was scrolling on his phone one night while I was feeding Kinsley, and not scrolling, because we didn't have Facebook, but I was on it. I think he had a message. Maybe I was being nosy. Maybe I went through his messages. Anyway, I found out on his phone, and I just felt completely betrayed. But I texted him the next day, and I asked him simply, do you need help? And I think at that point, he was ready to say yes. He needed someone, and he was ready for someone to call him out. And he said, yeah. Wow. And so I remember being... I'm at my second job by then. I had found a job in Americus closer to home to be nearer to Kinsley while she was in daycare. But I remember just welling up with tears. I had to leave the desk and go in the bathroom like oh my gosh, my husband's an addict. What am I supposed to do? I have this baby at home. And so I text his family or call them actually and tell them. And they said, we're on the way. We're going to come get him. And so they drove down, I think same day, same afternoon. And his dad was waiting on the couch for him when he got home from work that day. And his dad is a very big, burly man, very intimidating. But so he came home and Logan was like, what are you doing here? And he said, you know why I'm here? Let's go. Let's go get you some help. So we took him back home and they went to a clinic and they got him some medicine to help wean him off, I guess, of his opiates. And then so he just was doing that and still kind of a little bit detoxing at their house. But he still came home with that medicine. And it really is just another form of maybe a lower dosage of, it's called Suboxone, from what he had been used to taking. And I think he told me he got so frustrated one day that he was still on them. He was not clean, He still felt that high, and he wanted to get rid of him. He wanted to quit cold turkey. So he threw him out. He had an anger outburst, I remember, and he just said he hated who he was and what this was doing to him, and why did they give me this? So he got rid of it, and it took him a while, to detox. But he did it, and he did it all for Kinsley. He told her one day when he did not tell me this until years later. I'm pretty sure I just found this out a couple years later, but ago. But he told me that when she was a couple months old, she's sitting in her carrier in the living room, and I had gone to work. He didn't have to go to work until later, so he was able to drop Kinsley off at daycare, and he said he had done his thing, in the bathroom, and then came out, or he looked in the mirror and he hated who he saw. He hated who he was. And he thought, what a piece of crap, he was. He was not being a father and not living up to who he needed to be. And he looked at her. He said he got her out of her carrier and just looked at her. And he said, you don't deserve this. I'm going to make it right. I'm going to do this for you. And so I think that was when he realized he needed help. But he wasn't ready to own up to it yet. And so I think all those things kind of happened simultaneously together. But he did. He quit, and he got clean. And that little girl is his pride and joy. And they are so close right now, or growing up. But now their relationship is extremely close. And she loves her daddy, and he loves her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So going back to the you volunteering, it's one thing to make the choice to not choose abortion and to carry your child and to experience that, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, reorienting your life, getting married. All of these good things. But then you're sharing your story with others. Why is it important for you to be able to share your story with others?
I didn't start sharing publicly. I think I would share personally with someone, but I didn't start sharing publicly until years after Kinsley was born. I think she was probably 5 or 6 the first time I did, but it took me in that time to realize that I was given this story, and God wants me to share it with others and to encourage them who also find themselves in that situation, whether they are young or old. The thoughts are the same. The concerns may be different, but similar. And so I just felt it was important to not withhold that information. I felt like it was selfish to hold this story in because of how impactful it could be for others. And when I started sharing, I have had so many people come up to me, personally, or private message me on social media, and either tell me, a couple have told me that they were pregnant and expecting. And so I just encouraged them, and went through the same thoughts, that I had, and they were able to be open, because they are shameful thoughts, and it's not things that you want to tell anyone who hasn't experienced that before. But I have also had other young women and older women reach out to me and tell me that they had made a life-changing decision to abort their child. And every single one of them tells me that they regret it, that if they could go back in time, that they would change it, their decision. And it is so heartbreaking for them, but for me to see them, have to live with that decision. But also, it affirms me and the decision that I made, that how thankful I am that I made the right choice. And so hearing those women share with me encouraged me, I think, to share more, and to do so even publicly in front of larger crowds. And so now I never shy away from telling my story. It may vary from how many details are needed and who the audience is, but Kinsley knows her story, and she is so thankful to be here. Anytime I tell her if I'm going to speak somewhere, she just always bursts into tears and just gives me the biggest hug and just tells me that she's so thankful to be alive and that she loves me and that she's so glad that I didn't make that decision. And I'm telling you, she's going to change the world one day. She's a big leader.
Amazing.
Yeah.
When did you share with her? Like, kind of at what age? And
she came to an event that I shared at, I feel like it was a women's wellness event for Phoebe, and it was in the GSW Storm Dome, so it was a very large crowd, and this was still one of my first couple times sharing, so it was very scary for me, but she came, and she was in the crowd, and that was when she heard it. She was sitting with my mom, and I talked with her after. But I did tell her, I think I kind of briefed her and prepared her for what she was going to hear, but she had never heard all the details in the story. And each time that I've shared, I think I've said that I'll share more details, and sometimes I become more vulnerable. My husband never really shared about his addiction until this past year. He shared with me. We kind of did like a joint story for the that banquet for the Pregnancy Resource Center, and so she also came to that event. It was a video testimony that they had with others, and they played, and we had our families there too, and my only living grandfather and his parent, both of our sets of our parents, and Kinsley came, and there was not a dry eye at the table, and lots of grown men crying, but also people in the crowd and later came to him and told him that they had similar stories. Not similar stories, but they were past addicts or, had those similarities. And so they talked with him, and I think that also encouraged him. And so he has shared it with his work people. I think he's proud of that video now too, and so he's starting to come around with some of his sharing. He's not as public as I am. He's a little more internal and introverted, but I don't think he would shy from sharing his story either. But both of our stories, I mean, they're similar in that we were facing an unintended pregnancy, but they're different in how they changed us individually. And shaped who we are now. So, and it all boils down to Kinsley and that decision of bringing a child into the world. But then, later us becoming Christians and having, that relationship, just being encouraged to share with others now, not just our stories, messages of hope, but also the gospel at the same time.
Yeah.
And that, these children they're not mistakes. They're surprises, but they're unintended by us. They're unplanned by us, but they're not unplanned by God. And they have a purpose. You don't know what that's going to be yet, but you have to trust God's timing. For me, at that time, and Logan's life too, we thought it was the worst possible timing. But if you fast forward now and you look back, there was a reason. Logan probably was going to end up dead or in a hospital. Like, we were not going to end up being together. There's just some things that you don't know and you can't understand until later. And you may not always ever understand or know and find out, but God has a plan and you have to trust his timing. And we truly, truly saw that in this timeline of events play out.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So, well, let me ask you this as we kind of start landing the plane a little bit. I want to ask a little bit about. So you had mentioned that there are responses from women and maybe even men that just kind of come after hearing your story, and they kind of share with you kind of what they're processing.
I have had men, actually, that now that you say that, I have had 3 young men around our age message me and tell Logan that they have had women, girlfriends, whoever, make those decisions without consulting them or even consulting them, and they didn't care what they thought. They went and did it. And those men were heartbroken and just felt like this huge missing part of them. A friend of mine not long ago reached out, and he said he had a friend whose girlfriend did that, and a year later he committed suicide. Yeah, so they're living with this shame and guilt that they didn't even have a voice in helping with that decision and that choice.
Yeah.
So it affects not just the women, the men too, and then obviously the child.
Yeah.
Three humans' lives directly affected, and then think indirectly. The parents and the friends who are surrounded by them for years to come after, who have to help pick up the pieces. So dozens of lives affected directly and indirectly.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's a very important time in people's lives, and so what do you say? What would you say to those that that are kind of going through that? Maybe they find themselves pregnant, and what advice do you give to young women or that are going through that?
Yeah, I mean, really, you just got to listen. I listen first because sometimes their concerns were different than mine. But I listen, and then I tell them that I understand. I really do. But I give them encouragement, and I try to educate them also about what to expect, because I have done research, and as a trained volunteer with the Hope Center, I have learned the procedures, and I think a lot of people don't realize those. But I tell them, I try to encourage them and let them know that I've been there. I know what it's like. I know all the thoughts running through your head. But you can do this. And whether it's a single parent home or, your family is deciding to disown you. And if they are local, I'm always willing to help and support them in any way that I can, in any way. Yeah. Because children and babies mean that much to me. I love babies so much. And I tell them that there is other options that they can choose if they do not think that is something that they could move forward with. But I want them to know that, like I said earlier, that your child is not a mistake. And then whether you're a believer in God or not, your child has a purpose, and you can't take that away from them because you're not even giving them a chance.
Have you had conversations with those you had mentioned that have chosen to go through abortion, and how do you kind of encourage them to to know that they still have to be alone in that shame or that guilt or whatever they're experiencing?
Yeah. I remember when the first person messaged me that, I was at a loss for words. I didn't want to say anything that would hurt them or turn them away in any way. But I told them that I was sorry that in that time that they felt that that was the only decision that was the best decision for them at that time, because there was a time when I felt that too. And that I'm sorry that they didn't have the support that they needed in that moment of crisis. And I also tell them, because some women do not know this, that there is forgiveness in that. You just have to ask for it. I don't know actually. I know that they carry this burden. And some women have told me there's not a day that goes by that they don't think about the decision that they've made. But I let them know that there is forgiveness, but you have to ask for it. And you cannot hold on to this burden any longer, because it has such a grasp on your life and on your heart. You have to be able to let it go, and that there is so much freedom in being able to have forgiveness, to ask for forgiveness, to seek it, and to grant it sometimes too. For those who, sometimes it's parents who tell their child that this is what you have to do, and they almost force them, to make that decision. So, like I said, to just seek forgiveness and also grant it. Yeah. There's so much freedom in forgiveness.
Amen.
Yeah,
that's good. Well, let's kind of end a little bit of this podcast with, I'd love just to hear just a little bit more about your daughter and what she loves to do, kind of maybe she has aspirations, kind of what her thoughts are. I'd love to hear just a minute or two of you just kind of sharing, just a little bit about her.
Okay. She's such a gem. She's so beautiful, and she is so smart. She's into learning. She loves learning, and she's also an athlete. Gymnastics has been her passion since she could walk, pretty much. So she is a wonderful high-scoring gymnast, and she recently, this past year, got into cross country. She is very outgoing, like me. When she was younger, she definitely was full of sass. And I remember calling her sassy in front of a teacher one day, and she said, girl, those are leadership skills. You just have to learn how to hone them in and direct her the right way. And so that was what we did. And so she certainly has grown out of that into being a leader now, whether it's with her friends, in the classroom, outside of the classroom, in her youth group. She is a little entrepreneur. She is looking for any way to make money. This past year, she got invited to this really prestigious STEM camp in Atlanta. Wow. She was nominated by her gifted teacher at Furlough Charter School, and it was costly, and we told her if she wanted to go, she was going to have to, we would pay for the registration, the deposit. She had to raise the rest of the money. And she did. She did a bake sale. She organized a car wash. She asked and made little flyers up for the neighborhood about how she could go around and help and do anything around the house. So, and she ended up raising her money plus some. So that's she was awesome. Able to use that for, food and other things there too. But I can't say enough about her in 1 to 2 minutes, but she's just a genius child. She certainly has aspirations. Either after she got back from the STEM camp, she enjoyed the medical part of some things, and so engineering. She's very good. She's very good in math. She's just all A's. I mean, she's just so smart across the board. But those are things that she enjoys.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us and sharing your story. I love this, just being a part again of Americus and just living here and just meeting people and hearing their stories of encouragement and hope and joy. We talk about, neighboring a lot. And I think that one of the things that at least we could walk away with today is understanding the power of forgiveness. Is a true element of being a good neighbor too. And so getting a chance to hear people's story and listen to them and you can't get into people's shoes, right? Because there's too many nuances, but the joy of being able to listen and to try to connect the dots, I think is so important to be good neighbors. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And we look forward to continuing to see what God's going to continue to do in your life.
Yes.
So thank you.
I really appreciate you having me. And for anyone listening, again, if you find yourself in those shoes, look me up on Facebook, private message me if you know me or not. I will talk to any strangers, and I'm here. Find me.
That's awesome. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Awesome. Are we good? Yep. Yeah, that's
I ramble.
awesome. No, it's good. It was good. I think we got...